This district woman disrespects Judge Frank Caprio in the courtroom like she owns him, but his judgment is a piece of pure justice. The courtroom wasn't loud that morning, just the usual rustle of papers, the quiet shuffle of shoes, the hum of a building opening itself to another day of citizens and their mistakes. But when the heavy oak door swung open, the silence seemed to tilt. People looked up, not because of who walked in, but because of how she walked in. Dana Ellison moved as though the room were a hallway she'd funded, as though every inch of the space already owed her acknowledgement. Her heels clicked with the kind of certainty that comes from too many years of people stepping aside for her. On her blazer lapel gleamed a polished silver district badge, District Community Chair, proudly displayed as if it were a crown. She didn't wait for the bailiff to guide her. She simply strode to the defendant's table and set her designer handbag down with a soft thud that carried more arrogance than volume ever could. She kept her district ID hanging from her neck instead of putting it away, a silent message to anyone watching, "I'm not like the others who come through this door." When the clerk called her name, she didn't look up from her phone. She simply raised a finger, signaling the court to wait. A few people in the gallery exchanged glances. One woman whispered, "Who does she think she is?" The answer, apparently, was someone who believed the courtroom was beneath her. Judge Frank Caprio looked up slowly. He never reacted quickly, not out of patience, but out of principle. He believed in letting people reveal their character before he revealed his judgment. "Good morning, Ms. Ellison," he said gently. She didn't even lift her head. "Let's make this quick," she murmured, as if she were dismissing a waiter. Her tone wasn't loud, yet it sliced through the room with the clean, cold sharpness of entitlement. Judge Caprio set his pen down. Very softly. Almost too softly. A few people in the gallery straightened, sensing the shift. The clerk began reading the charges, each one landing like a slow drumbeat: illegal parking in a handicap loading zone, refusal to obey a lawful instruction, verbal abuse toward Officer Perez, attempted use of district authority to influence enforcement. Dana exhaled loudly, an irritated breath that suggested the charges were a personal inconvenience rather than consequences of real harm. "Your Honor," she said with the polished confidence of a woman who'd led dozens of board meetings, "this is being blown out of proportion. I was on official business. I was late for a district meeting. The officer misunderstood my urgency." She lifted her chin, waiting for the usual deference she received from junior staffers, community members, and even some inexperienced officers. It did not come. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Ellison," he said quietly, "this is a courtroom, not a district office. Urgency does not erase obligation." Dana's lips curled. "With respect, Your Honor, I serve this city every day. I simply needed a few minutes." The officer could have shown flexibility. The gallery reacted with small, contained breaths. Flexibility? For a handicap loading zone? For people who depended on that ramp to access the building without pain? A man in the back shook his head, whispering under his breath, "Here we go." Judge Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "You were parked in a designated disability access lane," he said, his tone measured. "That area is not a suggestion. It is not decorative paint. It exists because someone, somewhere in this city, needs it to enter the building you blocked." Dana crossed her arms. "I was there for 5 minutes," she insisted. "I'm sure no one suffered." Those words, "I'm sure no one suffered," hung in the air like an insult crafted from privilege. The judge looked to his left. "Before we continue," he said, turning to Officer Perez, "I'd like to confirm the duration of the obstruction." Officer Perez, standing with calm professionalism, answered, 17 minutes, Your Honor." The vehicle remained despite multiple warnings. A woman using a mobility aid had to be helped from the sidewalk because the ramp was blocked. The gallery reacted again. Not loudly, just sharply, with a rippled tension that exposed how out of touch Dana's confidence truly was. She waved a dismissive hand. The officer is exaggerating. It was nowhere near 17 minutes. I told him I was a district official and that I couldn't be delayed over something this trivial. She delivered the line without a flicker of shame, as though hierarchy should settle the dispute. As though her title, District Community Chair, were a universal pass. Judge Caprio folded his hands, studying her like one might study a puzzle whose pieces didn't quite fit together. You referenced your title during the exchange, he asked. Dana nodded. I reminded him who I was, yes. Sometimes officers don't understand the responsibilities district leaders carry. A woman in the gallery whispered, unbelievable. Dana pressed on. Look, Your Honor, I can pay the fine if that's what you want. My office can process it by the end of the... Judge Caprio cut her off, gently but with unmistakable firmness. Ms. Ellison, this court is not a payment portal. His voice was calm, almost tender, but it carried a weight far heavier than volume. This is a place where actions have meaning. And where titles do not rewrite truth. The silence deepened. Even Dana's confidence seemed unsure for the first time. The judge spoke again. Before we proceed with the evidence, please tell us where you are watching from, he said, turning briefly toward the camera without breaking the gravity of the moment. And if you believe public service should never be used as a shield from accountability, subscribe to Mercy Stories. What you're about to witness is a reminder that leadership is measured by humility, not convenience. Dana shifted in her seat, crossing her legs as though the chair were beneath her, but her fingers drummed lightly on the table, betraying the first small cracks in her armor. The real unraveling hadn't even begun. The tension in the courtroom grew heavier as Judge Caprio opened the Manila case file with the same deliberate calm he used when dealing with far more serious offenses. Dana Ellison, however, sat back in her chair with an air of forced patience, as though she were waiting for a meeting to finish rather than standing before a court of law. She smoothed her blazer sleeve, checked her nails, then lifted her chin, ready to shape the narrative into something flattering and harmless. Ms. Ellison, the judge began, walk me through what happened that morning. In your own words. She inhaled deeply. I was scheduled to meet with the District Advisory Committee. Important matters. Funding allocations, community concerns, all time sensitive. I arrived at the building and found no parking, so I stopped for, she emphasized the next words carefully, just a minute or two in front of the handicap loading zone. I assumed it wouldn't cause an issue. I stepped inside to sign some documents, and when I returned, Officer Perez was already writing a citation. I tried explaining that I'm a district official and that I couldn't afford delays over something so, her voice softened into a tone she likely used when speaking to subordinates. So minor. A low exhale rippled through the gallery. One man muttered, minor to her, maybe. Judge Caprio nodded once. And you believe the officer overreacted? Yes, she said quickly. Grossly. He behaved as if I committed a crime, not a momentary oversight. The judge turned his eyes to Officer Perez. Please read your narrative into the record. Officer Perez stepped forward, posture straight but not hostile. His voice remained calm and controlled, holding none of the bitterness Dana implied he possessed. At 9:42 a.m., he began, I observed a dark SUV parked directly in the handicap loading zone outside the district community center. The vehicle was unoccupied. I waited several minutes to see if the driver would return. At 9:47 a.m., a woman, later identified as Ms. Ellison, exited the building carrying a folder. I informed her she was parked in a restricted area and asked her to move the vehicle immediately. Dana shifted uncomfortably as he continued. She responded, quote, relax. I'm with the district. I'll be gone when I'm done. I then informed her I would have to issue a citation. At which point she displayed her district ID and said, I approve half the budgets in this zone, including whatever office you report to. Don't make this difficult. She refused to move the vehicle until she finished her business. Several heads in the gallery turned toward her, eyes widening. Dana's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Judge Caprio's tone remained even. "Ms. Ellison, is any part of that inaccurate?" She forced a small, brittle smile. "I may have been firm, but I wasn't threatening. I was clarifying my role." "Clarifying," the judge repeated softly. His eyes flicked back to the file. He pulled out the next piece of evidence, a printed statement. "We have a civilian account," he said. "From a woman named Margaret Hill." Dana's eyes narrowed. "A civilian statement? About what?" The judge read aloud. "Ms. Hill uses a mobility walker. She arrived at the community center that morning to attend a senior wellness program. She wrote, quote, when I arrived, a large SUV was blocking the ramp. I waited, but no one came. A staff member had to help lift my walker from the sidewalk to the entrance. It was humiliating and painful. I saw the driver return later. She did not apologize." A heavy silence filled the room. The gallery absorbed every word. Dana swallowed. "I didn't see her," she snapped, defensive and shrinking. "I wasn't aware she needed the ramp." "That," Judge Caprio replied, "is precisely the issue." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. He simply spoke with the clarity of a surgeon making an incision. Accessibility is not optional based on what you see. It exists because people like Ms. Hill cannot afford the luxury of assuming the ramp will be clear. It must be clear. Dana opened her mouth again, but the judge raised a hand gently. "There is more." He glanced to the clerk. "Miss Reyes, please read the call log for this case." The clerk read from the sheet. 2 calls and 1 voicemail were placed to the municipal court within 30 minutes of the citation. All from the district community chair's office. The judge nodded. "Ms. Ellison, did you instruct anyone from your office to contact the court?" "No," she said immediately. "Absolutely not. I had no idea. Then someone, somewhere, believed it was appropriate to intervene on your behalf." His tone sharpened, but only slightly. "That is concerning." Dana's veneer cracked. "I can't control what my staff does," she insisted. "My office handles hundreds of issues daily. Someone probably misunderstood the urgency." The judge looked at her with a long, quiet steadiness. "Ms. Ellison, urgency does not excuse entitlement. Nor does it excuse interference." He flipped to another page. "We also have a screenshot from the officer's account, body cam audio." Dana stiffened. "Officer Perez," the judge said, "please play the relevant portion." A faint hiss of static filled the room, followed by Dana's voice, sharp, unmistakable, dripping with disdain. "Write the ticket if you want. I'll have your supervisor explain the chain of command to you." A few people gasped. One woman whispered, "Wow." Dana's face drained of color. Judge Caprio set the remote down. "Ms. Ellison, is that your voice?" She paused, then nodded stiffly. "Yes, Your Honor." He folded his hands. "Let's proceed with a few simple questions. Please answer yes or no." Her back straightened, bracing. "Did you park in the handicap loading zone?" "Yes." "Did the officer ask you to move your vehicle?" "Yes." "Did you refuse?" She breathed out harshly. "Yes." "Did you reference your district position?" A beat of silence. Then, "Yes." "Did you imply consequences for the officer if he continued with enforcement?" Her eyes flickered away. "I only meant yes or no, Ms. Ellison." She closed her eyes. "Yes." The judge let the silence stretch. In that stillness, her title meant nothing at all. The gallery had quieted to a charged stillness, the kind of silence that exists only when truth hangs in the air heavy enough to reshape a room. Dana Ellison sat rigid, her polished confidence stripped back layer by layer until only the rawness of exposure remained. She pressed her lips together, trying to rebuild the mask she had walked in with. But masks don't hold well under the weight of evidence. And Judge Caprio was not finished. He leaned back slightly, hands folded, his expression neither angry nor triumphant. It was the expression of a man who has heard every excuse, every justification, every polished version of a bad decision, and knows exactly when someone is trying to out-talk accountability. "Ms. Ellison," he said softly, "you've given us your explanation. Now let's talk about truth." Dana exhaled. "Your Honor, I've already acknowledged I shouldn't have spoken that way. I was under pressure. The district was demanding my attention. I had back-to-back meetings and—" The judge interrupted gently. "Pressure does not grant permission to inconvenience the vulnerable. Public service is not a shield you raise when you choose convenience over compassion." Her eyes flickered with frustration. "I'm not a villain," she snapped. "I dedicate my life to helping this city." "And yet," the judge replied calmly, "on that morning, you made a decision that helped no one but yourself." She stiffened. "I didn't mean harm." He nodded. "Intent does not erase impact." She opened her mouth to respond, but the judge held up a hand again, measured, gentle, but firm. "Let us look beyond this single moment." He lifted a separate document from the file, its corner marked with a yellow tab. "We have a record from the parking authority. 3 prior warnings for obstructive parking near the district center in the past 2 years." Dana's posture snapped rigid. "Those were clerical misunderstandings," she insisted. "My staff." "Your staff did not park your car," the judge replied. "You did." The words cut, not because they were harsh, but because they left no room to hide. He continued reading. "One of those warnings includes a note from the responding officer. Defendant displayed district ID and stated she was exempt from minor parking enforcement while on official district business." The gallery buzzed faintly. Dana's cheeks reddened. "That was taken out of context," she protested. "I didn't mean I was exempt. I meant—" "You meant," the judge said quietly, "that your position justified bending rules designed to ensure public safety and access." Dana shook her head, but the denial was weak now. Her certainty was crumbling. Judge Caprio turned his attention to a sheet clipped behind the warnings. "We also have a staff email from your office, submitted by the prosecution. In it, you write," he paused only to verify the line, "if enforcement becomes a problem again, remind them who oversees their precinct budget requests." A soft gasp echoed from the gallery. Dana's voice sharpened. That email was never meant to be taken literally. It was internal. A joke. The judge's eyes lifted. Power is never a joke to those beneath it. He let the words settle, their truth rippling through the room. Dana's composure faltered completely now. Her breathing became shallow, her hands unsteady. She looked smaller, not because she was weak, but because without the armor of her title, there was nothing left to lean on. Judge Caprio steepled his fingers, studying her carefully. "Ms. Ellison, do you know what concerns me most?" She didn't answer. "It is not the parking violation. It is not even the disrespect toward an officer. It is that, in your mind, the district you claim to serve became a hierarchy, one where you stand above, and others below." "I don't think that way," she whispered. "Then why," he asked gently, "was the first tool you reached for your title? Not humility. Not apology. Not responsibility. But the badge of district authority you wore like a pass." Dana flinched. "It wasn't like that." The judge's voice lowered, turning into something closer to a mirror than a reprimand. "Leadership," he said, "is measured on the days when no one praises you. When no cameras are watching. When the people you inconvenience cannot fight back." Dana's throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. He leaned forward. You blocked a ramp meant for individuals who already carry burdens heavier than yours. Ms. Hill did not choose to walk with difficulty. She did not choose to be vulnerable in a world not built for her. But you chose to make her world smaller that morning. Dana blinked hard. Her voice trembled. I didn't know. And yet, the judge replied, ignorance is not innocence. If anything, it is a reminder of how power blinds those who forget to look down. The gallery remained silent, no shifting, no whispers, just an atmosphere so still it felt fragile. Judge Caprio set the document aside. One more piece of this puzzle, he said. He reached into the file and lifted a handwritten note. This is from Ms. Hill, the woman whose path you blocked. At the bottom, she wrote, I didn't expect special treatment. I just wanted to feel seen. A sharp breath escaped Dana's chest, as though she'd been struck where her armor was thinnest. Judge Caprio didn't gloat. He didn't raise his voice. He simply let the truth sit between them. Tell me, Miss Ellison, he asked softly, when did the people stop being the center of your service? Dana pressed her fingers to her forehead, the weight of the question sinking deeper than any fine could. For the first time, the courtroom saw not the district official, not the polished professional, not the woman with a badge, but a person facing the collapse of her own illusion. And the collapse had only just begun. For the first time since entering the courtroom, Dana Ellison wasn't defending a position, she was defending herself from the truth she had spent years avoiding. Her polished certainty was gone, replaced by a tremor in her breath she couldn't quite steady. The gallery watched in rapt silence, sensing that the moment they were witnessing was not just a legal reckoning, but a moral one. Judge Caprio turned another page of the case file, though his eyes remained fixed on Dana. He didn't need the paperwork anymore. The facts were established. Now he was studying the person behind them. Ms. Ellison, he began softly, I want you to listen carefully to what I'm about to say. Not to defend yourself, not to argue, but simply to listen. Dana nodded faintly, though her eyes darted downward, as if the weight of looking up had suddenly become too heavy. This morning's incident, he said, is not the story of a bad person. It is the story of a person who forgot the difference between authority and entitlement. Her shoulders tensed. You believe your title is a shield, he continued. But the truth is this, titles do not protect character. They reveal it. Dana swallowed hard. A faint tremor passed through her hands. The judge slid a photo forward. It was taken from the responding officer's phone, a clear shot of Dana's SUV blocking the ADA ramp. The yellow paint on the pavement practically screamed through the glossy paper. Do you see this image? He asked. Yes, Your Honor, she whispered. Describe it, he said gently. She hesitated, glancing toward the gallery as if hoping for an escape. None came. So she exhaled and forced the words out. My vehicle is blocking the access ramp. For how long? 14 minutes, she admitted, voice barely audible. And who did that inconvenience? She looked away. Ms. Hill. Who uses a walker, the judge added. Dana squeezed her eyes shut. I know. No, he replied softly, you didn't. If you truly knew, you wouldn't have done it. Silence engulfed the room again. Painful. Humbling. The judge lifted Ms. Hill's statement again. She wrote that she felt invisible. Ms. Ellison, do you understand the gravity of those words? Dana nodded. I do now. He leaned forward. Do you? Her breath caught. The facade of certainty she had carefully built around herself began to crack, revealing something far more human underneath. I didn't think, she admitted. I didn't consider her needs. I just saw the spot, told myself it was quick, and used my ID to justify it. Because you believed your job mattered more than her dignity, the judge said. Dana bowed her head. Yes. The admission seemed to pull the air from her lungs. She wasn't used to being this exposed, stripped of the armor of authority, left to confront a truth she never expected to face. Her voice shook as she continued. I've spent so many years pushing through long days, juggling demands, trying to meet expectations. I told myself that small shortcuts were harmless. That people would understand. That I deserved efficiency because I was serving the community. And yet, the judge replied, you forgot that the community does not serve you. You serve them. Her eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, but a tear still escaped despite her effort to maintain composure. The judge's tone didn't soften, but it deepened with meaning. This isn't about a parking violation. It's about the direction of your leadership. A leader who forgets to look down risks stepping on the very people they claim to protect. Dana's jaw quivered. The words were carving through layers of justification she had relied on for years. Judge Caprio continued, when you tell an officer, you don't understand how important my job is, you don't elevate yourself. You diminish the very principle that your job exists to uphold fairness. Dana's voice cracked. I didn't think it would become all of this. That, he said firmly, is precisely the problem. The gallery shifted, subtle movements of people who were beginning to understand that this wasn't a spectacle, but a reminder of something larger. Something universal. Something true. Dana lifted her head slowly. I'm not proud of how I acted. No one asked you to be proud, the judge replied. They asked you to be accountable. She inhaled shakily. I am. We will see, he said, because accountability is not measured by words. It is measured by change. Another silence stretched across the room, long, heavy, reverent. Then the judge lifted one final sheet of paper. Ms. Hill included one more note, he said. A question she wanted me to ask you. Dana's brow furrowed. A question? Yes. The judge read from the paper. If someone had treated your mother the way you treated me, would you still call it a small mistake? Dana froze. Her throat closed. Tears welled instantly, this time without resistance. She covered her mouth with her hand, the question slicing through every defensive layer she had left. She looked devastated, not by punishment, but by truth. That, Judge Caprio said in a quiet voice, is the heart of justice. Seeing yourself in the shoes of the people who suffer from your choices. Dana could only nod, her breath broken, her posture slumped, not in disrespect, but in realization. At last, the judge spoke the words that signaled the turning point. Ms. Ellison, the law will address your actions. But your conscience must address your intentions. Her tears fell freely now. And the room, though silent, understood. The collapse had happened. But what came next would determine whether she rose from it changed, or not at all. The courtroom held a silence so complete that even the soft hum of the fluorescent lights seemed hesitant to interrupt it. Dana Ellison sat motionless at the defendant's table, her confidence stripped down to something far more human, fragile, uncertain, and painfully aware of the eyes fixed on her. The woman who had walked in with a polished title and an unshakable sense of superiority now looked like someone facing her own reflection for the first time in years. Judge Caprio closed the case file with deliberate calm, allowing the weight of the moment to settle before he spoke. When he lifted his eyes to hers, they carried no anger, no spite, only a clarity that made her straighten involuntarily. Ms. Ellison, he began, his voice steady enough to quiet every breath in the room, your actions warrant consequences. But consequences mean nothing if they do not lead to understanding. Dana nodded slowly, the dampness in her eyes betraying the fight she'd been losing since the moment Ms. Hill's words were read aloud. She whispered, yes, Your Honor, with a sincerity that finally sounded real. The judge continued, this morning was not simply a matter of a parking violation. It was a matter of belief. You believed your position placed you above accountability, above inconvenience, above someone else's basic humanity. She swallowed hard, her throat tight, her voice trembling as she replied, I understand that now. Judge Caprio studied her for a long moment. Understanding is the beginning, he said gently, but it does not erase harm. It must shape responsibility. The gallery leaned forward slightly, instinctively sensing that the ruling they were moments away from hearing would not be just a punishment, but a message. The judge lifted a single sheet of paper and Dana's breath caught in her chest. For blocking an ADA access ramp, he began, the statutory fine is $350. She nodded. For refusing to comply with a lawful directive from Officer Ruiz, an additional $150. Another nod. And for attempting to leverage your position to evade accountability, the fine is $500. She exhaled, a shaky acceptance passing over her face. I accept all of it, she whispered. Judge Caprio raised a hand lightly. I am not finished. Her eyes widened. You will pay these fines yourself, he continued. Not through district reimbursement. Not through departmental funds. Not through influence or privilege. You will pay them because responsibility cannot be delegated. Dana nodded. Of course. The judge's tone deepened. But the fines are not the most important part of this ruling. A ripple moved through the gallery. This court is imposing a restorative action plan, one designed to teach humility, empathy, and the responsibility that true leadership demands. Dana straightened, bracing herself as though standing at the edge of a new life she was unprepared for. Judge Caprio began outlining the steps, but not with the coldness of punishment, instead, with the measured tone of someone offering a doorway out of the darkness she had walked herself into. He explained that she would write a personal apology to Ms. Hill, acknowledging not her intentions but the harm her decisions caused. He instructed her to record a short message that would be used in local workshops and schools, a message about respect and civic responsibility, without leaning on her title or position. He ordered her to volunteer with the city's accessibility division, assisting elderly and disabled residents and confronting firsthand the barriers that people like Ms. Hill face every day. She would attend a course on disability rights and mobility ethics, stand before community members to answer their questions directly, and write a reflection on the obligations of leadership, not as a district official, but as a citizen. Through every requirement, Dana listened with an expression that shifted from shock to humility to something that looked dangerously close to gratitude. When he finished, she spoke through a tight breath, I will do all of it, Your Honor. Judge Caprio nodded. Good. Because $400 of your total fine will be suspended and forgiven only if you complete every part of this plan with sincerity and on time. Dana blinked, surprised. Suspended. He nodded. Accountability is not meant to break you, Ms. Ellison. It is meant to rebuild you. Her eyes filled again, but this time the tears were not from humiliation, they were from the realization that she was being given an opportunity most people never receive. Thank you for giving me that chance, she whispered. The judge leaned forward. Do not thank me. Earn it. Another silence spread across the room, thick and reverent. Then, in a calm voice that carried the weight of decades spent guiding people through moments just like this, he delivered the sentence that would stay with her forever. Ms. Ellison, he said, you came into this courtroom believing your title was a shield. But real power is not measured by authority. It is measured by how you treat people when you believe no one is watching. His voice softened. Your judgment begins today, not with punishment, but with purpose. Dana pressed a hand to her chest, nodding through quiet tears. I won't forget this, Your Honor. Judge Caprio gave a single, solemn nod. I hope not. Because one day, someone weaker than you will rely on the person you choose to become next. He lifted the gavel, not as a symbol of finality, but as a seal of truth. The strike echoed once, clean, decisive, unforgettable. And as Dana walked out of the courtroom, humbled but changed, everyone watching understood the same thing, the punishment wasn't what transformed her. The justice did.